Unfortunately, the conversation of officiating has to carry on as we talk about the Canadian Premier League, and in particular, the match of the week. York United hosting Cavalry. We're getting a little bit too far removed to start calling it Martin Nash against this former team. This is Martin Nash trying to put together a couple of wins and getting healthy. They get their goal from Clément Baya, but Tommy Wheeldon Jr., and we will show you the footage. You can judge for yourself. I would have to agree that he and Cavalry were on the wrong side of a pretty poor decision from the assistant referee. Specifically for offside, there was another that where Tommy felt he wanted a handball. Let's get the initial thoughts from that, and we'll go to you first, Ollie.
Yeah, are we going to look at the incidents here first? Obviously,
yeah, we can roll them while you talk over them here.
They're mistakes, and they affect. Unfortunately, in this situation, it's not always the case, but this one affected the outcome of the game. I think it's hard to avoid that. That was a handball for me. Di Rosario's up. I think his arm is out when he jumps. You see it again here. Maybe you could say it's tight enough to the body to get away with it. I don't think so. I think that's a penalty, and this is the worst one. Obviously, it's just not offside, and a good goal is ruled out, and that is what you absolutely hate to see in any game: is a team scoring a good goal, and it not counting. And clearly, you can see there that Ali Musi, who had another great game, is onside. So that's a tough one for Cavalry. That's when you start to get the real complaints, is when you feel like it has a big impact on the result. I do think this season that there has been some improvements in the officiating. I don't think it's been perfect. We've seen some flashpoints, no question about it. But I think there has been a change in approach where referees generally have been a little more reluctant to make big decisions in the box without being fully sure. They haven't rushed to make those decisions as quickly as I think they were at times last season. And I think that has overall improved the quality of the officiating. So this one was unfortunate, and Cavalry, obviously have a right to be unhappy with the outcome of the game.
Gareth?
Let's hear from Tommy Wheeldon Jr. Then I'll weigh in, because I think it's important to hear what the manager had to say and then piggyback off that. So can we listen to Tommy here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, listen, York had a good goal on transition. We know that that's their threat, and then hunkered in. But we told the boys to keep going. Jose's goal's a goal. It's every week we have a call. Mickey's thing's a penalty every single week. So I'm trying to keep our guys focused on our play, because we're playing. Things we're working on in the training ground are happening on the pitch. And I just hope that in round 2 of the games, the scales level up, because I thought we were very good in a lot of our detail. And we should have had a goal and a penalty, but I'm not the official.
That's a frustrated man right there. And I agree with Ollie on the balance of this CPL season. I think the officiating overall has been an improvement. But there's been some flashpoints and moments that we've talked about on this show, and a bunch of them have to do with Cavalry. We'll show you a bunch of the calls or no calls. Kintav goes down there. I'm sure that Tommy believed that this was a penalty against Halifax, ended in 2-2 draw. Cavalry ended up scoring on a contentious penalty in that game. So perhaps those two evened each other out. There was the 2 incidents against York. There was against Pacific. For me, that's a penalty too. Pacific, Josh Hurd, the goal probably shouldn't have stood. You came from an offside position. Atletico Ottawa, they won this game, but this Escalante goal taken away because Meyer Bev, he was off the field. And he was called offside. So there's been a bunch of contentious moments, but I'm not sure how you guys feel about this. This dates back to last season and the season before that. The ball over the line, isn't it over the line? Hamilton, right after having Forge having Kyle Becker sent off, David Norman Jr. gets sent off in a controversial way. This has been building. And the problem is that we all understand that Canadian referees, this is giving them an opportunity to referee at the top level. Many of them are learning. Many of them are developing. We all get that. But people's reputations and jobs and resumes are on the line when regularly calls go against them. The stats are the stats. At the end of the day, your record's your record. And when it's influenced by calls like we saw on the weekend, that's a tough pill to swallow. So I think there needs to be some kind of compromise. The one area that I think that referees can do a better job at is communication. I just don't think it's at the level that it needs to be as of yet. But other than bringing in some kind of VAR, I think you're kind of stuck and you need to kind of live with the growing pains of it all. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that.
Ollie?
I mean, what else can you really do? Like, I think we all agree that we'd like to see the standard of refereeing improve, and hopefully we can, see that progress and holds the people in charge of the officiating accountable to it. But it's a young league with young referees. You are going to get some mistakes. And for me, like, you have a problem if you're having what happened on Saturday happen on a regular basis, where you see really bad errors that have an impact on the result. I'm just not sure that, and I know a lot of people would disagree with me on this, but I'm not sure that we're seeing that week to week to week in the CPL right now. Like a lot of those incidents that Cavalry are unhappy with, for me, they're not totally cut and dry. They can have one, yeah, that's a penalty, but later in that game they got one back that, like you said, Wheels, a decision in their favor. There was a penalty appeal on Moosey that for me was probably just outside the box. I don't think that was a penalty or that was a missed call. The Bevan one, like I think you can make a case that he is interfering with the goalkeeper there, and that's offside. Some people will say otherwise, and I understand their point of view, but I don't think all these decisions are cut and dry, and they are difficult to make, even if you have VAR. And even if you have the ability to watch it back like we are and assess it properly, you still get disagreements. So we've got to be very careful, I think, when you do criticize referees, to differentiate between what is clear cut and 100% wrong. And obviously that stuff we want to improve. And when there is still like some argument and some contention to what the right call actually is. And then, that's football. You've ultimately got to live with it, and you're always going to have those kinds of disagreements.
Yeah, and where I would a little bit disagree with Tommy Wheeldon Jr., I think his side has been doing well, but they're not playing anyone off the field. Like, all of their games are so tight, one way or another, where they're affected. I mean, in fairness, the play across the Canadian Premier League's been like that this season, where when a blown or missed call, it can impact the game so much. And the ones that need to be right is the Escalante goal against York United, which was called back offside. It clearly wasn't called. It clearly wasn't offside. These are the calls that I think that if you bring in VAR light, and you guys brought this to my attention, and maybe Ollie can speak on this a little bit more. It was used in Belgium last year. It's been used in, I believe, the Indian Super League. It can be applied at less of a cost and with fewer cameras. And as long as they get rid of or help adjudicate black and white plays, like cut and dry, like is the ball in or out? Is a player on, and I'm not talking about like drawing like lines on the field. I'm like, is he blatantly offside or isn't he? Did the ball hit his hand or not? Like, these are the types of things. Subjective calls, I'm fine if they're just left alone, but getting the big calls right with very little, breakup of the game, I think that it can be done effectively, and that's something interesting to see if the CPL pursues something like this.
Gareth, the one problem with what you just said, and then I'll get Ollie to weigh in, is we're not allowed to draw lines anymore at OneSoccer. We had one chance.
Jordan isn't.
Slapped on the wrist. The iPad is gone. Sorry, I haven't had the chance to get a dig in yet on Will. Go ahead, Ollie.
Yeah, so just on VAR quickly, I think I've said this before on the show, but it has been discussed. I think there are a lot of people who assumed it wouldn't really be viable for the CPL at this point. I think it could be. The light solution is probably, I would imagine, the one that they would explore, again, because it is more cost effective. It requires a little bit less, and bringing in full VAR, I think would probably be too costly for the league at this point. The problem I have with it is that I think one of the effects we've seen of VAR in the big leagues in Europe and so on is that it raises the level of expectation as to what you're going to get from refereeing. Now everyone expects perfection, and we may have a similar effect if we bring in even a light version of VAR into the CPL. And you are not going to get it. It's still humans operating this. It's not goal line technology. It still comes back down to individual judgment. There's going to be stuff you're frustrated with. And at times, I kind of think that the implementation of VAR elsewhere in the world has, if anything, raised tensions, raised abusive referees, and not really helped with that problem. So something they're going to have to think about, but it has been discussed and does seem to be something that they're considering.
Well, that's why it's VAR light, Ollie. If you hate VAR, you will hate this one slightly less.
Bit lighter.
I just want to add, as somebody who, I think I'm at 20 matches called for the CPL of the 28, and I agree with what you guys have said in that we're not Like you'll always get, if you are a supporter of a team where you feel hard done by, you're always going to get that echo chamber.
Yeah.
Bad refs need to be better. I truly think this year, I mean, I look at the fact that we're a quarter of the way through the season, and we'll talk about the play and the quarter mark shortly. We've seen 3 penalties given in 28 games. There is no longer that immediate point to the spot. If there's a tie, we're giving a penalty. I think
One was a mistake.
I think for the assistant referee in the match at York Lions Stadium, Paulin Jr. Vanier, I honestly think he's one of the better assistant referees. And the offside calls have been almost perfect this season. Most of the issues have been handball, no handball thus far. And I think it's worth noting as well that the referees that are being given the appointments in the match, you look at the ages on a lot of these young men and women. If they're not being progressed to more money, higher events, 23, 24, 25, like some of these refs are younger than the players on the field because, again, it is that development league. And I think you're seeing strides of refs who you might have thought in the first couple of years were not at their best. All of a sudden, they're in year 3 and they're making much better decisions.
Yep,
they're
that's
controlling
fair.
the game better. So
Standard is getting better. You're right.
The standard is getting better. And the one thing I will add for VAR, look, the ultimate thing that we can all agree on is somebody has to pay for it. That's pretty much the only reason, in my opinion, why it's not been implemented yet. There is a case to be made. It's an investment in getting more Canadian referees VAR certified, VAR experience, and I'm sure when it makes sense for the league, it is something they will seriously consider. I don't know this, I'm saying, but it might make sense if they try and build a solution for, say, the playoffs or for the final, where you can do it on a couple of occasions, see what works, see what doesn't. Yes, you'd have arguments about it, but I just wanted to add that I think that this conversation about it has been perfectly fair down the middle. It's not always the ref's fault, and you always have the adage too, you should not leave the match in the hands of the referee anyways. If you can go out and make sure that one decision is not going to affect a 90, 95, 100-minute performance, that's probably the way to go.
Ollie, I just wanted to hear Ollie say VAR. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely
VAR,
nothing. I would still
what
happily
is it
go
good
back
for?
to pre-VAR and just forget it ever happens, just for the records.